Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for making the time to join us for part one of a two-part series around customer success. I'm excited about talking with our alums, Bobby Koch and also Tim Aaron, Zicklin MBA alums, to talk about their roles in customer success, specifically what customer success is, especially within tech. We'll obviously have some time for questions, but without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Tim Aaron to kick us off. Tim, thank you so much to Bob and you for making the time and for leading our students through what customer success is.
Awesome. Thank you, Justin, and welcome everyone. Happy Thursday. We're going to dive deep into customer success today and have another session next week. So very excited to have you all. So I'm Tim. I'm a Baruch MBA alum graduated 2021. And I've worked in strategic client relationship management across a few different marketing technology startups across the gambit, pretty much. Managing client relationships post-sale, from implementation through quarterly business reviews, renewals, upsells. Can speak a lot about my experience today. I advise clients like Staples, Intel Corporation, Hartford Insurance Company on marketing and strategy, and very excited to share this day with you all.
I will introduce myself as well. So, hi everybody, I'm Bobby Koch. I graduated from Zicklin in 2020, so just a short year before Tim, and had the pleasure of meeting Tim at one of our events that you should all attend now that I think you're able to go back in person, because Tim and I still talk regularly, so just wanted to give that a quick plug. But I am a customer success manager at Adobe, which I'm sure many of you have heard of. Previously, I did also work in the startup world, so I worked at a sports registration software company as a CSM. What CSM means for me is a little bit different these days, just because we're going through a model change, and I will talk a little bit about that as we get more into overall what customer success means and what it looks like. But really excited to talk to you all, and thanks again for joining.
Awesome. So, from both Optimove's perspective and also your work, Bobby, at Adobe. So, high level, what is customer success? Lead us through that, Tim. Can you kick us off?
Oh yeah. So I work at Optimove. It's a customer data platform as well as CRM marketing hub that allows marketers to significantly scale CRM marketing and segmentation. So we're very data focused, and customer success for us means everything post-sale. So from implementation, we're working with solutions engineers to perform integrations. We're working with data team members to ingest different data sources, create attributes that our clients can segment based on, working very closely across the boards with various stakeholders at various levels of our clients. So that's generally CMOs, VPs of marketing. Again, I'm in MarTech, directors of marketing, and some tactical users at the marketing manager level. And really, my goal is to take whatever the client's strategy is, very much understand what their strategy is, and help them implement that within our platform. And so generally, it's around creating segments, finding what offers are resonating with their customer base, really looking at consumer behavior and understanding, and we do an RFM plus model. So we're segmenting based on the statistically significant events that are influencing consumer behavior. And we look at, recency of purchase, frequency of purchase, monetary value of purchase, what product preferences there are. And our goal is to essentially make recommendations on, what segments they should be targeting. Within those segments, what offers and messaging should we be creating? And then from there, we also perform executive business reviews. So this is something that we perform on a biannual basis. I've also worked at companies where we perform it on a quarterly basis, but where we essentially align with clients' leadership and stakeholders across the boards to review performance. What is the incremental uplift driven by different channels via email, via Facebook, via Google, lots of display, social, And then we also handle renewals. And so our goal is very much retention focused. I've also worked at firms where my goal is also upsell focused. So selling new products or additional products to the customers. But bottom line, our goal is to make the customers happy, really create strong relationships and ensure that customers both renew and buy more, and that the partnership is mutually going forward well.
Bobby, what's different for in your role, if anything, of what Tim's role is at Optimove?
Yeah, there's definitely a good amount of similarities. A lot of what Tim described applies to a lot of customer success, but there are some differences, both from, so we have what's called the dedicated CSM model, as well as the engagement CSM model. I recently moved into what's called an engagement CSM role. And so I'll describe a little bit about both the differences.
Thank you.
So what Tim's describing is what we would call the dedicated CSM model. And there are some differences there in that our dedicated CSMs are not responsible for renewal. There's a renewal specialist, and that may be some of the difference of like Tim has to wear many different hats because he's at a company like Optimove, whereas Adobe can afford a bit more resources. And so there are people who specialize in all these different tasks that sometimes CSMs do have to take on. And I'm not saying that in the past I have not taken on those roles and sometimes still need to at Adobe, but technically we're not responsible for renewal. We're not even really responsible for upsell. We do want to help our sales counterparts in helping identify opportunities, but it's not a KPI we're responsible for. The dedicated CSMs are responsible for 3 pillars, which is essentially adoption, meaning are they adopting the tools that we've seen make clients successful? And at the end of the day, if they're successful, to Tim's point, they will then renew their contract, which is somewhat of our scoreboard. Value, meaning what are their success metrics? And Tim talked to that too about aligning on their business goals and making sure they're hitting those. And then just partnership. And Tim talked about that as well, providing some thought leadership, connecting them with the right people at the right time, things of that nature. Where the engagement model differs is the name CSM or dedicated CSM is on the account permanently or until account changes happen. The engagement CSM focuses on, Adobe has some, just to clarify, I'm on the Adobe Experience Cloud side of things, so you might all be thinking of like Photoshop, etc. I am on the side that's more like analytics, Target, Marketo, Experience Manager, etc. So more of the digital experience type content. And very specifically now, since I said I moved into that engagement model, I am on the content team. So my focus is on Adobe Experience Manager and its solutions and helping whoever I'm engaged with make sure they're getting the most out of whatever content tool they purchase, whether that's their digital asset management tool of assets, helping them with their website with Adobe Sites, or forms with Adobe Forms. And so what happens now is sales puts in a request for a specific type of engagement, and there's 3 types of engagement, which are a start strong, meaning you just bought it. And to Tim's point, that's like, we're going to help you make sure that you're implementing and getting initial value. Adoption and value, which is you're a long-term customer, and we're going to help make sure that you're adopting at maximum capacity. Or customer health or get well, essentially, which is, hey, you've run into some challenges. Let's bring in a CSM to help you very specifically resolve those challenges. And the model, I really like it because it allows you to focus more on products, and we're targeting the right engagement at the right time instead of always just having a dedicated CSM. Not that there's nothing or something wrong with that, but I will tell you, at least from what I've seen in the industry, it's becoming an industry trend to have much more of this engagement model where you're bringing in CSMs at a particular time rather than having them be on an account all the time, because sometimes you'll have conversations where they'll be like, I don't have anything to talk about at this moment. Whereas under this engagement model, you're coming in and the customer definitely wants to talk to you.
So here's one question. So even stepping back, Bobby and Tim, Bobby, did you even know what customer success was before you started to explore it? And what isn't customer success, or what sort of surprised you about the role?
Sure. I don't think I know anyone who, at least now, I think it's changing a bit, but at least when I started, I don't think I know anyone who intentionally became a customer success manager. At the startup that I worked at, I kind of fell into the role where I think I initially came in for like a sales assistant role or something like that. And they pivoted and were like, you're much more of like a customer centric type person. So we're going to put you in this role. What surprised me was really just at least now, maybe not so much then, but as it's continued to grow, the amount of people that are in the C-suite that you see now coming from these roles of customer success, and also the fact that there are now roles that are being created at the C-suite level that are very specific to customer success. Because when I first started, I'm not going to lie to all of you, and the reason why I do these talks is because customer success was very much like an ignored part of the business, and people are like, oh, isn't that just support? It is not just support. It is very much on the account management side, post sales. There is some support level maybe involved, or maybe you're working with support teams, but the idea that we're just doing support really minimizes the impact that customer success managers have. And I also will say that what surprised me is how strategic it is. And being in Zicklin, I can imagine you're all very interested in strategy. So it is a good role to look into if you're interested in strategy. But Tim, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on it.
Yeah, absolutely. Also very similar experience. So I came into customer success. I had been working as a sales development rep. So basically cold calling, cold emailing, trying to get meetings with prospective clients that I would then pass on to my account executive. Didn't love the hunting aspect of it and really wanted something where I could have long-term client relationship management and much more on the strategic end of things. And also found, similar to Bobby in terms of what surprised me was how versatile the role is. You can go from customer success into solutions engineering if you want to be more technical. You can go into account management, which is a sort of more sales side of things. You can go into sales if you want. Or you can go the management route and climb up the customer success ladder. Other roles that are adjacent are partnerships, and also seen an increasing number of C-suite roles. Chief customer officer really didn't used to be a thing, and now we're realizing that, hey, actually, it's cheaper to keep clients than to acquire new clients, and so big focus on retention, renewal, upsell, and beyond.
So Tim, to go off of what Bobby you just talked about, who should be thinking about these roles? So like, if you both put yourselves into the Tim and Bobby MBA hat when you started your first semester, or even before, who are the types of people, personality-wise, skill-wise, who should be thinking about this? Tim, do you want to kick us off on that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And one thing I'll mention is that Bobby and I are both in MarTech customer success roles, but there are customer success roles across different tech orgs. Core technology orgs. Think of your MongoDBs, your Amazon Web Services. Even expense management solutions, which the roles differ across the boards, but where I think there's an opportunity for people to move into customer success is if you, one, love interacting with people, two, really like synthesizing clients' strategic goals into project plans, and sort of also like working both externally with stakeholders at every level of the gambit. So again, you're working with VPs of both, in our case, marketing and in information technology. But you also are working internally in sort of a hub and spoke model. We're the point of contact to the client. We then loop in other internal team members. And so if you, especially within MarTech, if you like, data analysis, looking at improving different KPIs, whether that's, I'll say, vanity metrics in terms of opening and clicks, or actual bottom line revenue metrics such as, basket value size, number of purchases, things like that. If you're a people person, like data, especially within the MarTech world, it's a great role for you. Also, really employs a lot of strategy, especially within the MarTech world. We're looking to make our clients more money, and so we have to figure out what are the competitive advantages of our clients, how does that work into the offers they create, the messaging that they create, how can they differentiate themselves from other big players in the space.
Bobby, any additions to that you can think of?
I think Tim summed it up really well. The only other things that I would add is, he also alluded to this earlier, but if you have an interest in exploring other roles and aren't fully sure what you want to do, not that I'm saying like customer success can be a backup, but it does give you exposure to a ton of other roles. And to Tim's point, I have seen people move into product roles or sales roles or other technical roles from being a customer success manager. So it can be one of those things that if you're not fully sure where you fit in, it is a good fit for you. But at the end of the day, while we all have somewhat different personalities, the one core thing that I've seen every single customer success manager have as a personality trait is we are, to Tim's point, people. We care deeply about people in general, and this is outside of our roles in our job. We are just people who enjoy connecting with other people and seeing other people be successful. If you don't have that quality, you will not be successful as a customer success manager.
And just to add to that, absolutely people, and also problem solving. Not everything is just built into the platform where whatever a client's goal is, there's an easy path forward. But really being a problem solver, and to Bobby's point, I also have seen people move into product roles. You pretty much get to touch every other role within the org because you're working with them on a daily basis, and so you're exposed to literally everything and can take it whichever way you want to go.
And one other thing to add, sorry, Justyn, just one other thing to add about that makes customer success itself an attractive role, as opposed to just using it to step into these other roles, is if you're someone who likes variety, I can almost guarantee you that every day will not look the same because you're working with so many other teams or working on so many different problems that you won't get bored, because there will be new and different challenges pretty much each day.
Totally. So, Tim, I totally get your point, right? That Bobby, you're coming from MarTech companies, and it really, and that customer success sits also, whether it's Salesforce or I guess that could be another MarTech, but could be Quicken or whatever it might be. But ultimately, don't candidates also just need it? No matter what the customer success role is, you kind of have to like tech.
Oh yeah.
Right. Can both of you talk about that as well? Like, I'd love to hear about your interaction with tech, and maybe even describe sort of like what you like about tech, whether it's at your roles or whatever. That's also a component, right?
Absolutely. So in terms of interacting with tech, I mean, what tech's meant to do is to make things that we used to do easier in a more streamlined manner. And so in terms of working with tech, we're also doing a lot in terms of integrating with other platforms, especially within the MarTech world, or if you're in the expense management world, you're integrating with ERPs, things like that. And so you're exposed to APIs, essentially connections between two systems. Especially in the MarTech world, you learn a lot about data. You learn how to, it depends on what company you're at, but how to ingest data, how to create different attributes based on data that you'll target your customers with. And yeah, I mean, you're thinking about the future, how you can advance. You're looking at product roadmaps, working with your product team, because one of the other things that we do a lot of is take feedback from our clients, and then work with our product teams to see what might be most relevant, what might apply to most customers, and then try to get that into the product roadmap going forward.
Yeah.
So across the boards, yeah, working heavily in tech. I believe the customer success role stemmed out of Salesforce, and they were really the first ones to even create this role that was sort of a bridge between sales, which was pre-sales, and then you sort of had no one in the middle except for customer support and otherwise, and then your sales team members were doing renewals, and so super unique entrance into the market with the customer success role that Salesforce did, and then all companies sort of saw that that was a great model for retention and started adopting it for the path forward.
Bobby, what about tech and you? What drives you? What's exciting about that for you?
Well, so there's a couple things I want to address here. Well, I think it's important to like tech. What I think a lot of people do is they talk themselves out of it because they say, I don't have the technical skills, meaning I don't know I don't know SQL, for example, to get into customer success. And in most customer success roles, you are not doing coding. So don't talk yourself out of the role just because you personally don't know how to code. That said, talking to people who are doing the coding should excite you to a certain extent, even if you can't fully understand what they're doing. At a high level, the stuff they're talking about should be interesting to you, or else it's probably not a great role for you. I personally, since I was about 3 years old, I started playing video games, and I've played video games since. I've built my own computers starting when I was like 12. And so I've always just been really interested in technology and how it works and can move things forward. I'm also, as Tim pointed out, in MarTech, and I'm very interested in marketing and how marketing impacts people's decisions on pretty much anything. So really, you need to have that interest in tech, but what I hesitate with is just, I know there are people out there who talk themselves out of customer success roles because they go, I don't have an engineering background. It's not an engineering role. You will talk to engineers, so you need to at least be able to somewhat understand or comprehend what they're saying. But at the end of the day, and I know we'll get into this a bit next time, but if I'm hiring someone or I'm helping to make a decision about hiring someone, I'm looking much more for that people person than someone who fully understands tech, because I think that part is teachable as long as they have an interest in it. What Tim was talking about with like the APIs or what a CRM is or things of that nature. I'm pretty confident that I can educate someone in what that means. However, if they're not a people person, that's just somewhat of an innate thing that is much harder to bring them up to speed on. And I see a question of what do you mean by people person? What I mean by a people person is someone who enjoys talking to other people. They enjoy essentially meeting new people. It's weird because some people will think you can't be introverted. You can be introverted. You just need to be interested in talking to people and learning about people and helping to solve their challenges. Because, and I'm sure Tim will agree with this, in our role, if you were to say like, oh, that's not really like my problem, or I don't care so much about that, you won't get a lot done. Our job is to advocate for the customer, and to really truly advocate for them, you have to care about them as a person.
Would it be good to understand the customer, like ask questions about what they're going for, just so we can get a feel of what approach to take? Absolutely.
So there's this thing called, and I'm sure Tim will talk about this too, but there's this thing you do with pretty much any new customer called discovery. And so what you're trying to do is uncover what their goals are, what they're trying to achieve. And also, before you even get into all of that, I will say one of the mistakes I made as a younger customer success manager was I almost made myself robotic in like, okay, tell me your KPIs and KPOs. Do not do that. The first thing you do is just talk to them as a person and start to get to know them and say like, okay, hey, now that we're a little bit friendly and we've had conversations about your wife and your kids and your dog, and you work here and you went to school here. Now that we've had that, can you tell me a little bit about what you're trying to accomplish this year? And I can see how I can help you with that. And then everything ties back to what they're trying to accomplish. And if you make, especially your, what we call their champion at the customer, look good to their boss, you will feel the effects of that. They will feel the effects of that. Everyone will be happy. They will probably renew. They will probably upsell.
Oh yeah, huge agreement. In some ways, we sell promotions. You know, if we conduct discovery, which is again, as Bobby was saying, sort of figuring out, you know, what the customer's needs are, what they're going for, what their key performance indicators are, what the business metrics are and business goals are that they have, and help them achieve that and make them look good if it's a VP of marketing to their boss, their CMO. If we crush it, they get promoted to SVP, and now boom, they're going to renew with us because we made them look great. And yeah, like what I was saying, I've seen both introverted and extroverted team members succeed hugely in customer success. It's really about, after making a sort of personal relationship with the customer or with the client, because that'll really carry you through the hard times. I mean, you know, things aren't going to always go well with the client. Your platform might go down. You might have days where, you know, promos didn't send to 5 million customers, and so your revenue is impacted. And so having that personal relationship as a basis really helps get through the hard times, building trust initially. As Bobby mentioned, like I literally talk to my clients about their kids, their dog, so that it just breaks down the barriers. We're no longer a vendor to them. We're really a partner helping them figure out how to achieve their business goals. And
a friend, in other words.
Oh yeah.
Sometimes a friend. Sometimes you have to have difficult conversations, which Tim was alluding to too, where ideally you are getting to know your customer really well and be friendly with them. But at the same time, and I'm sure Tim would agree with this, a customer success manager, while I say they need to be a people person, that doesn't mean that you need to be friendly all the time. You need to learn how to be assertive and have difficult conversations in the right way. Because someone who's not a people person will have a difficult conversation, but they will not go about it in the right way. And they will piss off the customer probably 9.5 times out of 10. Maybe they get lucky with that other 0.5, but that's part of what I was highlighting too. And sorry, Tim, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh yeah, no. And in terms of also building the relationship, I mean, I've worked in roles where we manage many clients, you know, 50 plus, but I've also worked in more strategic roles like I do right now, where my book of business is 10 enterprise clients. And essentially, you know, I mean, we do on-sites with clients, we present to them in person, we get to, you know, travel across the boards, take our clients out to drinks. The relationship goes huge way. And you do have to have difficult conversation with them. And even in conducting discovery, like doing the rule of asking why 3 times to really get to the heart of what they're going for, it is super helpful. Really understanding what they want to achieve, both for the business as well as for them personally, goes, you know, leagues for the relationship and beyond.
Right, thank you. My name is Cheyenne. I am a senior in Baruch, pursuing my undergrad in computer information systems, information risk management concentration. I'm also on LinkedIn.
Awesome.
Pleasure to meet you, Cheyenne.
Cheyenne, thanks for introducing yourself too. So we'll just open up Q&A. Obviously, I can keep going, but we've got some people who've got questions. So just be sure, if you could, we could pretend like we're actually in a room together. So if you can introduce yourself with your name, your program, it'll help Bobby and Tim sort of give some perspective. So Rachel, do you want to kick us off and continue?
Yeah, of course. So hi, I'm sorry if it's a little bit loud where I am. I do apologize. My name is Rachel Celentano. Hi, Bobby. Hi, Tim and Justyn. I'm on LinkedIn. I am an evening MBA student. This is my last semester. I am going through my consulting practicum right now, capstone. So very excited about that. I wanted to kind of piggyback off what you guys were saying about people person, and I just had a more recent experience that I think might help give a little context as to what you may mean. I actually had a conference that was down in South America, and their culture is a lot different there. And so the US, like we seem to very much like jump into like issues and problems and or like what we want to talk about, to get something done. And when we went to go meet with the team that we were working with, they automatically said to us, okay, would you like some coffee? Like, let's have coffee and sit down. And then started talking about, their personal life. So it was more about like, it's not being a friend, but it's more like being friendly to like, that's what I learned throughout that experience, and getting to know the person and like person first, then business was a very interesting, order for me to experience. And I did very much like that and appreciated it. My question to you is a little bit different, but what if I were, let's say, like apply to a company that I don't necessarily have like a full-on background with? So for example, like a program tech company that I've never used the tech before, but I have done research on the company to be some type of, customer success type role. What's your advice on that? Would you say, go for it and then it's teachable? Or would you say that you would need a little bit more of a background in order to really understand the role?
Great question, and great to meet you as well. Bottom line is definitely go for it. The fact that you have your MBA experience means that you understand how to analyze data, you know how to work with other team members, the consulting practicum. A lot of that is like what we do with clients in a way. And there are going to be roles for much more experienced customer success managers, but there are also roles, if it says 3 years of experience, definitely can apply to those roles. It's all teachable, pretty much. Yeah, if you are excited, show excitement for the role, and it's something where it's again, like 3 years or less experience, absolutely can do it. And if you can show experience that you've had that's adjacent, anything with regard to problem solving, really creating stories that highlight your experience, that when you read the job description will showcase different aspects of that, you're gonna rock it.
I only have 2 things to add there, because I basically agree with everything that Tim said. There only 2 things were, one, I applied for a company that told me that like technically I did not have the right experience for them. If a company tells you that, I guarantee you that they are lying to you, because you can pick it up. There are companies that are a bit more technical in what they have their customer success managers do, but none of them, as I said earlier, really have you do like engineering or anything like that. And so they maybe had another candidate in mind, or just like don't like something about your experience or whatever, but it's not about that technical aspect. And to Tim's point, something that I continue to learn, and one of my managers at Adobe continually tells me, or has told me, I no longer report to this manager, is don't tell yourself no. This is just general career advice. Don't tell yourself no. Let other people tell you no. Go for that job, even though you don't necessarily think you're qualified, because you never know. And I use that as an example because while I did not get a role, I applied for a role that I thought internally that I thought I was not at all qualified for. And I actually made the final round interviews. So I continually surprised myself by getting that far. And then the other thing is, Rachel, I just wanted to address really quickly. You brought up a really great point along the lines about being a people person, which is you do need to adjust yourself to the people that you're talking to. And so people speak in different languages, and I'm not just talking about like actual languages, like you talk to engineers different than you talk to like a salesperson, for example, or even in, I don't know so much about Tim's role, but at least in my role, it is very much global. And so I work with counterparts that are in India, I work in counterparts in the UK, I work all across the spectrum. I've worked with those people, and culturally there are things that are very different. And so part of being a people person is being sensitive to what those different things mean culturally, and not just, to your point, coming in and like, for example, going to someone in India and being like, I'm just going to get right down to business, because they too often like to start the conversation with a little bit of just, casual conversation, which is a nice thing to do. But Americans tend to be a little bit blunt. And so sometimes you need to watch yourself and just change your tone a little bit depending on who you're talking to is a good thing to keep in mind in customer success. And that even goes for like the different personas. You don't talk to a day-to-day operator the same way you talk to Tim's point, like a CMO. It's just different roles and they require different ways of being spoken to.
Oh yeah, and to piggyback on that, so yeah, different cultures have different ways of communication. I've had clients where, you know, they're very polite and, you know, things aren't going so well, and we're trying to gauge, are they, you know, going to renew their contract with us? And so obviously you have to be sensitive to how you say it, but bottom line, you know, you can, despite, you know, what culture they're from, figure out and really unearth, like, you know, where are we at in relationship? They might be saying, oh yeah, everything is great, great, great. But to dig that one layer deeper and, you know, what's going great, what's not going great? You know, if we achieve X, Y, Z, are you going to continue to do business with us? And then in terms of, you know, coming from a non-customer success background, if you can, you know, highlight your experience in terms of, you know, problems that you've solved, business problems that you've solved, whether it's in your consulting practicum or beyond. If you can highlight, one of the best interview questions I've ever been asked was, explain the most complex thing that you can in layman's terms. Because a lot of what you're doing is, especially within MarTech, I've primarily worked in like machine learning side of things. You know, you really have to, in some ways, also be a salesperson. And in order to drive that adoption, you need to have them really understand what your platform does. And it may be very, very complicated, how the algorithms work, how the segmentation works. But if you can take that and decipher that and distill that down, you know, being a rock star communicator really goes a long way in customer success.
And next week, next Thursday, part 2 of this series is really going to drill down into that interview process too. So definitely join us for that. Hopefully you can join us for that, Rachel. And thanks for the question. Emmett, you're next.
Yeah, thanks. Hi, Justin. Hi, Bobby and Tim. I'm Emmett Markin. I'm an MBA candidate, and it's my final year, so final countdown. Woohoo, yeah. And so I have 2 questions. One is a follow-up actually to Rachel's, which is sort of, and Bobby, you highlighted this, that in some cases, you know, someone said you don't have the technical skills, the odds are, you know, they're not being completely transparent. What I've seen in a few instances is for software aspect, they want really prior SaaS experience. You could have all the transferable skills, but they're sort of like 2 cents back is SaaS. So the question for Bobby and for Tim is sort of like, when you see something like that, what is a best way to try to sort of mitigate that bridge? Like, I've gone out to try to show that I understand, you know, core concepts there, but what else sort of can be done just to try to get your foot through the door to have a conversation?
That's a great question. I'm not sure that I have a good answer for you, because as much as I say, when I'm talking about the tech part of it, I'm saying like you need to understand their specific technology. That part, I think they're not being entirely truthful about. When you're talking about you need prior SaaS experience, I will admit that I'm not the best person to help you figure out how to get there, only because one way or another, I just kind of fell into SaaS experience. My first real job out of college was SaaS, and I've continued to work in SaaS. And I know one of the things when Adobe hired me that really helped me stand out was they were looking for that prior SaaS experience. One thing when I talk to, and I've talked to some Baruch students one-on-one, I talk to other people one-on-one, that I do try to tell people is, even if, and I know it may be a little late in the game for this, but if you can get like an internship at a startup that's SaaS, even that is transferable, because it at least shows that you have that experience. And startups are more likely to hire you just because by nature they need more people and they're more willing to take a shot on an intern. So that's something I generally recommend, is however you can, and it might not always be the best experience, but get some kind of SaaS experience on your resume, because I do know, as much as I'd love to sit here and go, oh no, all the other skills they'll ignore it, they won't care. From what I've seen, hiring managers do very much care about that previous SaaS experience, and I don't want to mislead anybody.
It definitely helps, yeah, having SaaS experience to go into SaaS companies, especially if they mention it. But on the other hand, I'll say that, and we'll go into this in the next session that's happening next week, but one of the biggest things that I see in terms of trying to get the job is if you're applying to a job that has, SaaS experience and you're, submitting a cover letter and a resume, likely you're not going to hear back. But if you look up the hiring manager on LinkedIn and give them a quick pitch, first, and I'll go through all this on the next session, but first connect with them on LinkedIn, show a little bit of excitement, give them your elevator pitch on why you add value. Getting them on a call, first of all, your hit rate is going to be a lot higher, and then they're not going to just screen you out because you don't have SaaS experience. If you can show that you have all experience of all the other aspects of the role in MarTech, if it's, data analysis, if you can showcase your experience and create stories behind your problem solving skills, they may not care about the SaaS experience. I've seen team members who come from non-SaaS, some who come from, pretty much everything across the boards, but from, selling diapers, and now boom, they're in a SaaS role. So getting that first call might be screened out, especially if you're, applying with a resume and cover letter. But if you can get the hiring manager on the phone, literally, look at customer success director at whatever your target company is, and leverage the fact that you're a student and just want to learn more. It's all about making low pressure asks. If you say, can you give me a job in your LinkedIn note, boom, you're not going to hear back. But if you show excitement, I'm super interested in your mission. Here's a little bit about me, your competitive advantage, and then, interested in learning more, would love to chat. A lot of people love helping students, and so I think it'll go far away.
Yeah, just to echo Tim's point, networking is very key. And as I noted earlier, a lot of us in customer success are people who like other people. So if you reach out to us, there's a decent chance. I'm not saying everybody in customer success is going to want to help you, but there's a decent chance that we'll want to help you because that's just somewhat of our nature and personality. The other thing is, like, to Tim's point, reaching out to people you may know at the company, or even maybe not even necessarily a director, but just seeing who you have connections with. Another good one is Justyn, who is hosting this call for all of you, does a bunch of outreach and keeps in touch with alumni. And so he may know someone at a company that you're interested at and may be able to make an intro for you that way. But really getting out there and networking is definitely a huge part of it too, especially if you don't have that previous experience to rely on.
Emmett, thanks for the question.
Thank you.
Penny, you're up next.
Hello, thank you so much, Bobby and Tim. Really appreciate it. Yeah, I'm in my final semester for my MBA program. I think like a few people shared, so excited to have this, almost done. I actually have a background in like technical operations and did a coding bootcamp actually a year and a half ago to really like lock in a lot of that technical knowledge. And I was looking into different customer success roles, but while I was doing my networking, I have heard like some people kick back a little bit and say about, it really depends on the company's culture about their customer success team. And sometimes like, I don't know if it's true or not, Israel, I would love to hear from you. I've heard even that, if the company's culture is not a customer success culture, it's actually one of the first positions that get laid off in a downturn, unfortunately. But then I have also heard about companies that really understand the value customer success brings and really integrate it. And, so that my question would be how to screen a company to make sure that their culture is a place that a customer success manager can thrive. And a little bit related, but just a separate question is also, since it's not a sales-based role, like what would be the KPIs and stuff that a company would, evaluate a customer success, their work based off of.
Okay. Congrats to all of you, by the way, who are about to graduate. And so two things in a way. The way that I look at how a company values a role, one, you can see in salary and comp that they're offering. You know, if it's something that is a much more operational role, you know, more customer supporty, the pay is going to be way less, and the role and responsibilities are going to be more in terms of solving issues rather than problem solving and being a consultative partner with your clients. In terms of you know, pay across the boards, there are very different levels of pay within the customer success role. I would say on average, especially because there is so much demand for good talent right now, you know, we're easily seeing six-figure roles off the bat. A lot of customer success managers roles I've even been, you know, prying around. You know, you'll see 100 base plus commission, 120 base plus commission. And so looking at what the responsibilities are is also key. You know, if you're replaceable, for lack of a better way of saying it, and your responsibilities are very limited, then yeah, it could be a churn and burn role. But if you're really working on the strategic end of things, job security is a lot higher, and those that can work in these jobs are a lot fewer. And so, you know, supply is low, demand is high. Not seeing too many layoffs across the boards, at least in my peers in customer success. I know tech is going through a bit of a rut with the stock market and everything, but overall, if they are customer focused, especially if it is tied to revenue, you know, if you are handling renewals, upsells, revenue is king, or if you're working on strategic initiatives with clients, such as, you know, key product adoption, that'll give a sense.
Yeah, and I echo everything Tim said. The only other thing I would add is just, so you asked about like some of the other things that we're measured on, and some of that would be like, so some of that bonus comp, at least for me, that Tim was talking about, was like helping surface leads to sales, which leads naturally to like upsells and things of that nature. You know, we're measured on renewals and whether we're retaining our book of business. The other thing that you can do to get a sense of the customer success culture, because you're right, it does vary from honestly company to company. There are some that it's starting to become much more standardized among, but generally speaking, there are still some companies where, I talked about this earlier, where some people see customer success as glorified support, and in its ideal role, that is not what it is. A lot of SaaS companies will prioritize customer success just because, not to get too into it, but Tim talked about this a bit, but it's actually much more important to their models and how they present themselves financially to retain customers than it is to get new logos. And that's just been proven out over time. And so as more companies realize that, customer success actually starts to become one of the last people or organizations to get let go. And to Tim's point, while in tech, I have seen, unfortunately, a lot of layoffs. And if any of you were impacted by that, I am sorry for you and happy to help out in any way I can. Also, I did want to also reiterate, congrats to you in your last semesters. I also guess kind of sorry to you, to those of you working on your consulting projects. I know those were somewhat stressful, but you will get through it. The other thing you can do, and I know I already talked about this, is try to connect with people at those companies, especially more on like a peer-to-peer level, so not like the director level. There are some people that are like, you know, associates or CSMs as opposed to like senior CSMs or whatever. And honestly, most people are usually, at least if you get them one-on-one, pretty willing to tell you what their organization is like pretty truthfully. So that way you can get a sense of whether it is, a true like strategic customer success role, or it is one where it's more of a glorified support role, and how the company treats it. And I will say, even in my role where I feel like customer success is very important to Adobe, we don't necessarily get the budget that some other organizations get. And so even as it gets more important, it's not necessarily as prioritized as some other roles may be, but it is getting there, at least with certain companies.
And just to add on, in terms of KPIs, in my role, it's primarily renewal focused, have also been renewal and upsell. So, goal of retaining X% of book of business revenue wise, and then upselling X% of book of business. There are a lot of different comp models. I've been in roles where you get 3% of renewing your book of business and 10% of any upsell contracts that you sell with accelerators after that. I've also seen models where there's sort of a pool of bonus, and depending on where you net in terms of logo retention and dollar amount retention, but primarily it's renewal and potentially upsell focused, depending on what company you're at.
Thank you so much. Really
Thanks,
appreciate
Penny. Ong, you're next.
So my name is Hong. It's a little noisy in the library here, but I'll try to make the best out of it. I'm a senior at Baruch, undergrad, about to graduate. As a customer success intern right now at a SaaS company, I have some exposure to the implementation process, kickoff calls, whatever it is. But when you mentioned the difficult conversations you have with your clients, how do you manage those expectations, whether it's project timelines, renewal prices, subscriptions, whatever ACV, whatever it is? How do you manage those expectations when you're having those, difficult conversations?
Guess I'll go first on this one. I essentially go with a strategy I call rip the Band-Aid, because I learned in my younger career that I tried as much as possible to avoid having those hard conversations, and that came back to bite me. Ultimately, what you need to realize is that you're setting your customer up, even if it feels painful in the moment. If you're at a point where you have to have a difficult conversation, you're setting your customer up for success long-term by having that difficult conversation. It's not, let's just have a difficult conversation to have a difficult conversation. It's, let's have a difficult conversation because I realize something has gone wrong here and there's something that we need to fix, and I'm going to present a potential solution. This gets back to what Tim was talking about being a problem solver. I will say every once in a while, you may have a difficult conversation that gets to, hey, I'm having a difficult conversation, and the difficult conversation is essentially you need to invest more resources to solve this. And you may not invest more resources because you're already at a point where you're mad and you don't want to do that. But if it's presented well, at least the customer generally understands that you have their best interests at heart. Ultimately, there are times that they will see, this is probably one of the times where they will see you more as a vendor than a partner. But if you do it well, you can actually, done really, really well, these difficult conversations are the strongest relationship builders. Because it's when you have those difficult conversations and show the customer that you're willing to have them and try to guide them in a way that will benefit them, even if at the time they may be angry at you, they'll come back if it works the way it's intended to and say, wow, I really appreciate that you're essentially willing to tell me how it is and not just, sugarcoat that everything's going great.
Oh yeah, and to piggyback on that, I mean, when it really depends on what conversation we're having, but I always go to sticking to the facts. If the platform is down and you don't know when it's going to return, stick to the facts. That's all you can do. Make sure that they understand, the client, that, your team is working on it with high priority, but, not over promising anything, sticking to the facts. And as Bob was mentioning, when I did this thing at Oracle where we journey mapped, and we found that you actually have a stronger relationship if there are difficult conversations in the middle versus, and that drives renewal. Again, depends on what the difficult conversation is, but versus with clients that it's all smooth sailing throughout, there's actually less renewal and less of, building the engagement with the team. So difficult conversations are great. I always stick to the facts and also try to leverage my personal relationship that I've created with them over time. But sometimes, Slack went down earlier this year. What could we do? Our CSMs are telling us it's down, our team's working on it. We don't know when it's going to be resolved. And that's all we can do.
And one last thing that I will add to that, and I realized as I started talking that I started to lose my train of thought, but I did have something to add here, was just that if you have a difficult conversation, it's not necessarily, to Tim's point, it depends on what the difficult conversation is, but it honestly just shows that the customer cares. That's how you almost have to frame it to yourself. I'm only having this difficult conversation because this customer cares about the success of the platform. If they're just, we're hands off and just letting it run or whatever, they don't care. They don't see the long-term vision. This person is angry at me right now, but they're angry because they want it to be successful. I don't know if any of you are sports fans, but I use this analogy sometimes where I'm a sports fan, and I think it was maybe Aaron Judge or someone else recently who said about Yankee fans that they boo because they want to cheer. It's a very similar concept. That's how I think about it when I have a difficult conversation with the customers. They are booing us because they really want to be happy with it, but they're just not at the moment.
Yeah. And bringing solutions to the table. If something has gone wrong and there are solutions, even if they're not ideal, bringing multiple solutions and then giving the power to the client for them to decide how they want to proceed often works well.
One last thing, I remembered where I lost my train of thought. Follow up, because what I've seen way too much, especially from younger customer success managers or customer success associates, is they say that they will do things and then they won't provide an update. And even if just the update is, hey, our team is still working on it, I have no update, that itself is an update. Don't just let them go, like, especially if it's a critical situation, don't let them go 24 hours without hearing from you, because they'll think, oh, this person forgot about it, I'm not a priority, and now I'm going to go with this other company because they pay more attention to me.
Cheyenne here again. Can I ask a question relating to the update?
Relating to which update?
Sending an update of what's going on with the company to the customer.
Oh, sure.
Let's just say I decide to write a bot that notifies the customer whenever. Would that be okay or no?
Depends on what the issue is. Like, for example, our customer support team, not our customer success team, has automated for client reach out to customer support. They have automated bot. If someone doesn't get to it after X minutes, boom, it says, hey, we're looking into this. But definitely depends on what the issue is. If it is a critical issue, I will tell my client that I've received it, working on it with our team, just so that they understand we're aware about it. But bot will work for something, not everything.
I'll give a slightly more assertive or maybe even aggressive answer than Tim, which is like, if it's for the system is down, sure, that's fine, because generally people understand that people have site updates that tell you when the system is down. But if it's a critical time for them that from knowing their strategy and the system goes down, the whole reason that customer success managers have jobs rather than our jobs being automated, because I'm not going to lie to you guys, a lot of our jobs probably could be automated, or a lot of portions of our jobs could be automated, is the human and personal touch. And so generally speaking, a bot is not going to be able to replace reaching out and making that human connection with the customer and reassuring them. Because sometimes our job is, and this is maybe not the best way to phrase it, but it's the way I sometimes think of it, is to be almost a therapist for our clients or partners and just listen to them rant. And it doesn't matter if we can necessarily solve it. They just feel better because they're talking to a real person and you're listening to their problems and they feel heard. Whereas if they talk to a bot or have a bot reach out to them, they're probably going to get angry.
Totally.
Yeah.
All right, we're at 6 o'clock actually, so we're gonna have to cut off. But I do want to make a plug for next Thursday. So next Thursday is going to be about interviewing. So I suggest to everybody, and we'll share this video, but if you get on Indeed or even Handshake, set up a job alert for customer success and start getting some job descriptions and start reading them, because you might have some questions around interviewing if you were to land an interview. Tim, Bobby, just want to say huge thanks to both of you for being so open, such an open book with all of the questions, and thank you for all the questions as well. We look forward to seeing you next Thursday and diving into interviewing.
Thank you, Justyn. Pumped, looking forward to it.
Yay!
Thank you, everyone. This was a great session.
Awesome, absolutely. All right, have a great night, everybody. Thanks for being here.